There was a sense already of sort of who he was, this sort of honourable man, earnest, concerned with duty, but also concerned with the duty that comes along with family. So I sort of felt from the outset that was something that I could hopefully capture.
Tell me, Sam, your casting story.
My casting story. So Suzanne Smith casts the show, and I know Suzanne a bit. She gets me in for a few things. The audition came through for Lord Melton, and I think the first thing I did was call Stephen Cree, who's a friend of mine who's obviously in the show. I told him that I had an audition, and he said, "Good luck." And I said, "Do you have any tips?" And I think he just said something along the lines of, "Don't be shit." He probably actually said something much more useful than that. I'm probably not giving him due credit. My memory is terrible, so apologies, Stephen, if I'm miscrediting you there. I went along, and it was a taping with Suzanne, and yeah, I thought it went well at the time. It was just a sort of 2 or 3 scenes. I was very pleasantly surprised when I got a call from my agent, probably 3 or 4 weeks later, I guess, saying that I'd got the part. I was thrilled because Stephen had obviously spoken very highly of the show, and I didn't really know much about it at that point, but no, even just that initial sort of idea of what I'd be doing, I was excited.
What information did you have about the character for that? Did you quickly read all of the books, all 3 books, 900 pages, and then?
Absolutely. I mean, in the 2 days I had to prepare, I read through. No, I didn't. I wish I could say I was that dedicated, but I don't think it was a lot of information. I'm not even totally sure whether they told me what the character's real name was at the time, because they quite often, particularly for sort of popular ongoing shows, they quite often hide the names.
What did it say? Like a soldier?
Sometimes it can be that little. I remember it saying that this was, a bit of background on the story, a bit of background on John Grey. And I remember them talking about Lord Melton as this man of honour, this experienced military man who was sort of honourable but caught in this sort of potentially difficult situation. I remember the scene was the scene where he is sort of, executing the Jacobites and meeting Jamie.
John Grey is my brother. He told me of his meeting with you that you then spared his life, and he made you a promise. Is that true? He promised to kill me. But never mind if you do it for him. He said he owed you a debt of honor. Present! File! My lord. This is a deuce of a situation, Wallace. This Jacobite scum is Red Jamie. The one on the broadsheet? The same. His Grace would be more than pleased to hear of such an illustrious prisoner. They've not yet found Charles Stuart, but a few well-known Jacobites should appease the crowds at Tower Hill.
Shall I send a message to His Grace?
No. This filthy wretch spared my youngest brother's life, thus incurring a bloody great debt of honor upon my family.
I see. So you can't give him to His Grace, after all?
I can't even shoot the bastard, not without discrediting my brother's sworn word.
I wouldn't tell if you did.
Perhaps we could shoot him. Under an alias.
Present! Fire!
There was a sense already of sort of who he was, this sort of honourable man, earnest, concerned with duty, but also concerned with the duty that comes along with family. So I'm a family man, and although I haven't quite had the same binds that the Melton family found themselves in, I felt like it was, I often get cast in these quite earnest, trustworthy, straight military type characters.
In my research, I discovered your family is actually nobility. This lordship stuff is not new to you, right?
Sounds like you might know more about my family than I do. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would describe my family as nobility.
I can read you a name, which you probably are familiar with. Your great-grandfather was Baron Herbert Kaiser, first Baron Rotherwick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that, being in your family, does that inform your character at all? The way you play Hal? You're like, oh, Uncle so-and-so is like this, and so I'm going to...
I don't. I mean, I had a very privileged, comfortable upbringing. I went to an excellent school. I was very, very fortunate, but I wasn't brought up in a sort of like manor house or with sort of lords and ladies around. I think my grandfather, who I did know a bit, he wasn't a lord. He was sort of one of the younger sons. So I don't know. I mean, obviously aware somewhat of the sort of further roots, but my personal experiences, whilst of being a very, as I said, sort of comfortable, privileged background, was not that of sort of, horse and carriages and servants and lords and ladies and masquerade balls and all the sort of things that one might connect with the life of the true sort of aristocracy. There wasn't anyone who I was specifically thinking of. I mean, it's true, I went to school with some lords and ladies, so I suppose I have, well, lords, actually, it was an all boys school, not so much with the ladies, but I obviously am not millions of miles away from those sorts of circles. But
you would have been in Prince William's class at Eton, right?
I was the year above him.
Okay.
I was the year above him, but I went to two of the same schools with him as William. Actually, I was at Eton and Ludgrove with him. So yeah, we schooled a bit together.
So you didn't realize, because this role that you have taken on actually has legs. I'm sure you're aware of it now. If you didn't even know the guy's name, you probably weren't aware that there's a novella completely dedicated to Hal and Minnie, and there's the Lord John Grey series, and he's in two more of the big books. So it's potentially a depending on what happens, a big role.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. When I got the part, I think they told me I would be in maybe 2 or 3 episodes within series 3. And then I think that got cut down to 2. So I sort of thought, well, 2 episodes is better than nothing. And I started filming quite soon after I got the part. So, and what with my kids and writing, I don't know if I do a lot of writing. I knew I wouldn't have time to read all the books. So I did as much research as I could. I sort of read some of the, obviously the sort of stuff online. And then I started watching some of the show, which I'd never seen before. And I have to say, I didn't expect necessarily to enjoy it as much as I did. I ended up watching sort of both the first 2 series within about 4 days. And then I obviously got into it much more. And that's when I started looking into it. And that's when I found out about the Lord John Grey series, and you know, as you said, the novellas, and about about more of Hal's story and how he comes back into it. So that was exciting because, you know, I went from thinking, oh, I've got this tiny little, you know, quite small little thing in 2 parts, which still was great, to thinking, oh, wait a second, this, you know, this character is potentially part of the fabric in a bigger way.
Did you do any kind of chemistry test with David Barry, or meet him before you guys just started?
No, I would have loved to have done a chemistry test with David. He's such a delightful man. No, I think he got cast I think he got cast after me. I think he got cast quite late into the process. And I remember I was up in Scotland and I was filming, and I think he had just been cast, and they flew him across from Australia. And as I remember it, this poor guy sort of had arrived, you know, jet lagged, and he'd been sort of thrown straight into sort of wigs and makeup, and you know, given the sort of some of the looks that he was going to have. And I met him in hair and makeup one morning with Meryl Davis, I think, who just said, you know, this is your brother. And I was like, hi. And he was like, hey. And he was sort of jet lagged and tired, poor guy, been in a bit of a whirlwind. And obviously, you know, he's playing this really considerable, important part. And I think it had all happened very quickly, and was exciting, but probably a bit overwhelming. But he was, he was just so nice and sort of chilled out about it. He was a bit concerned about the accent, because he obviously had to do not his natural accent. So we had a couple of sort of conversations which might have been useful for him, because my accent is probably naturally closer to the mark for some of the reasons we've discussed. And that was about it. And that was the first time I met him. Later on, we shot the scenes that we had together in the series. And yeah, as I said, he was just a really nice man. And it was really wonderful working with him. And I hope I'll get to do some more further down the line, but we'll see what happens.
So once you had the role and you had a little bit of time, even though you don't have a lot of time with everything that you're doing, with 2 toddlers, and, you know, I know what it's like to have 2 kids, and I have a husband who travels a lot, and to have a very sought after actress who's your kid's mom and your wife, and then you have 2 toddlers, and you write, direct, act, and Mr. Mom it a lot, I think. You guys, do you guys sleep, or?
Not this week. This week has not been a great week for sleep, I have to say. Our boy has not been very well. And unlike my daughter, he's not the most stoic of children, as much as I adore him. So this week has been tough. And yeah, you know, it is a juggle. We like to be busy. You know, I am not very good at being unproductive. And I think that's why I probably started writing, because, you know, acting is fantastic, and it's probably my sort of my primary career. It's how I earn my living for the most part. But as you know, unless you are, you know, Tom Hardy, you have breaks, you have time in between, and you know, you're always waiting for people to facilitate your work. So that's why I started writing. You know, I feel pretty happy with where my writing career is at the moment. It's a bit like pushing a boulder up the hill, and I feel like I'm beginning to get nearer to seeing the top of the hill. You know, things are beginning to happen, but it takes a lot of work, and it's hard because, you know, I'm doing childcare, I'm trying to find time to write, I'm trying, you know, I have to find time for auditions or for self-tapes or for acting work. you know, and obviously there's life beyond that. There's, you know, occasionally wanting to see my friends and family, trying to sort of go to the theatre and see films, because that's, you know, an important part of what we do. So yeah, it's busy, but you know, I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about your Twitter account where, you know, I was just, as I was doing my research, I was scrolling through there, and I do remember, you know, when it came up, seeing the tweet when you were like, "Oh, I'm at the whatever you guys call it. We call it laundromat." You know, because the whole family has a stomach virus and our washer's broken. Good times, and you know, those of us who are parents, we've all been through those moments, and it's just like
beautiful moments.
and your peers who don't have kids, you know, who are like, "Oh, I'm so tired." Sometimes you think like, "Oh man, you have no idea, dude."
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny. I mean, I always remember, you know, feeling tired before I had kids, and I think, what did I have to be tired about then? And then I remember feeling like really tired when I had one kid, and now I've got two kids, and I'm like, what did I have to feel about tired with one kid? One kid is a breeze. Now I've got two kids. Two kids, you know, that is hardcore. But I guess, yeah, I guess people always have their relative burdens and issues, and generally people are tired because life is hard, whatever it is. But yeah, I'd say having a couple of kids definitely adds to the tiredness at times.
When you, after you got the role and you were developing the character, did you work from a character sketch, from the scripts, from watching the show, just all of it? And I'm thinking about, you know, have you seen the show, the final product in season 3?
I haven't seen season 3 yet. It's interesting because I find it very hard to watch myself. I've sort of been gearing up to it. My wife is actually about to do a play in London, and I've sort of been thinking when she's doing a play, I have a lot of evenings to myself, and that's often the time where I catch up on sort of my TV. So I think in my mind, I'm finding time for a good binge.
I thought you did a great job. We first see you in this cabin during the Jacobite rebellion or the end of Culloden, and you know, Jamie's lying there dying, and you come in and you're sending everybody out to get executed. It just struck me that, you know, you played that, you came across as honorable, yet you were all business, like with the two little young boys, but you didn't come across as heartless at all. So it was a very kind of fine line to tread. How'd you come up with that fine line?
Well, I didn't, to be honest. I think when I first sort of performed it, the director Brendan, I think most actors often probably have a natural instinct to make their characters as sort of sympathetic and as likable as possible. And I think actually when I first did the first few run-throughs, I was probably playing him, or I was playing him too soft and too sort of like, oh, you know, this is really hard for me. And the director sort of said, look, you know, you're a soldier, you know, this is your life. Like, you know, you can't, it's not realistic or believable that you would be this upset by it. So, you know, you've got to bring that back a little bit. And I was like, yeah, it's a good point. I was very much helped to find that balance. And I think, you know, the writing is really good. And as someone who writes, you know, I like to think that I have perhaps added awareness of these things, but you know, the writing is really detailed, and it really allowed me to have these moments where you see both the sort of necessities of the situation, but equally within that, a degree of compassion, perhaps. So yeah, you know, the scripts were good, and it's great to come in as, you know, an obviously very secondary character, but to really have those sort of moments and those colors and those nuances within a scene. You know, that's as an actor, you know, that's what you're looking for, is to have a script and a journey and a sort of three-dimensionality. Is that a word? I don't think so, but let's go with it. To have a three-dimensionality within you know, for your character within the scene.
You had this little head movement as Hal.
Yeah.
Were you aware of that? I mean, was that intentional?
Yes, I worked for months and months perfecting that head technique. No, I'm afraid not. That was I can't. Oh, it's possible. I can't remember. I mean, it might have been something that I thought of on the day, but I can't remember honing a specific head technique for Hal. I'll have to watch it back, because who knows, if Hal comes back, that head movement's going to have to come back too. So thank you for pointing that out.
Well, you know, here's the thing: he didn't really have it in another scene, but what I just thought, okay, well, that was really stressful, and he's having to be this, you know, go kill people, but he does have. It was almost seemed like something that would come from repressing that humanistic side of yourself. You know,
exactly what.
And there's the moment with Rupert where, you know, it's just a split second, but you can see that Hal is affected by him saying, you know, something like, "I'm gonna keep a quick pace, so try to keep up," you know, and Hal just looks at him. I'm being very casual, Lord Melton, officer something. Anyway.
Okay. You know, I think Hal's he's pretty chilled out about it. He probably isn't, actually, but I am. That was Rupert's final moment. And you know, having, as I said, become a fan of the show, I think I probably felt the weight of that. And Grant, you know, gives such a great performance. And I remember thinking, you know, within that situation, I think Hal or anyone would be impressed by the man's sort of lightness. And yeah, and it's because it's not, you know, it's not even just macho. It's a sort of like, it's a levity that makes the whole thing, transports the whole thing for a moment.
Farewell, Jamie.
Does any man wish to be next?
Aye. Rupert Thomas Alexander Mackenzie. I mean to set a quick pace, so try to keep up.
Next.
Did you do any scenes with Jack Holden, who played Hector?
Yeah, I did. I have a feeling it didn't make it in.
Hector did not make it in the show at all.
Yeah, which is a shame, because he's such a good actor as well.
I can't even imagine like getting cast, doing all the work, and then, you know, and they do that sometimes. They say, okay, we've got to just chop off this whole part of the storyline.
It was a really good scene as well. I remember doing it and sort of thinking, as in, like, you know, they had a lot of people there. The costumes were great. The makeup was great. You know, I thought it was really good. It was set in this beautiful sort of location. You know, I remember being, I think that might have been the first scene that I did, actually. And I remember being quite impressed by the sort of scale of the whole show. So yeah, it's a pity that didn't get in, because actually it was a really nice scene, I thought, mainly between you know, the actor playing John and Hector. You know, I thought they did it really well. So yeah, it's a shame. I have a vague feeling that I saw it on Twitter somewhere, or someone had got hold of the deleted scene. I don't know how.
You may be outraged when you see season 3.
I am. I'm already outraged. This is my outraged moustache. You can't see.
Do you have any? What was your favorite scene to shoot? That one that didn't make it in?
Oh, they were all good. I mean, the scene that I shot with coming across Jamie and John playing chess, that was a fun scene. It was a really, really beautiful location that day, and when we arrived, it was this beautiful sort of pond with like autumnal leaves falling and a sort of morning fog. And I remember that I think they wrote that scene later, and I was sort of surprised to have that extra scene, so that was exciting. I had the delight of sort of escorting Tanya. So Tanya, I know I've sort of worked with her since, and yes, Hannah, of course. Sorry, Hannah. Who were lovely and really good fun, and it was the first scene that I was doing with David as well. So that was a fun day. That was a really, really beautiful occasion. It was a nice day, and it was good fun, and it was quite it was quite easy and not quite as not quite as wrenching as having to sort of send people off to their death.
Johnny.
It appears my next move will have to wait.
Colonel Melton, you must remember Mackenzie.
Mackenzie? Yes. Although it's been some time now.
Aye. We are acquainted, my lady.
Major Grey was good enough to recommend Mr. Mackenzie to us. He's a master of the horses. If only he were as good with people as he is with horses. How has your family managed without him?
If it were up to me, I would never have let such a man go. But then I'm not my brother.
Come, Lord Melton. We have much to catch up on. Why don't we do it over a game of cribbage?
It would be my pleasure.
Well, that one's in there.
Yes.
And it's a really nice exchange between you and David Barry. You get the sense of like you're the disapproving older brother, and he's like oh,
again, a lifetime of being disapproved of.
So if you do go on and do A Fugitive Green and these other things, who would you like to play Minnie?
Oh, that's an impossible question. I mean, I can't. My wife? I mean, I kind of have to say that, right? Like, I mean, I can't. I'm not sure I can legitimately say anyone else.
Can you say your wife's name, please? Because I'm afraid I'm going to mispronounce it.
God, well, now I feel like I might mispronounce it. Romola Gary. There we go.
Did you see that? The fireworks?
I'm friends with a lot of fantastically talented actresses. So a few spring to mind, but I couldn't possibly take any pics other than my beloved betrothed, of course.
Yeah, let's do a group deal. That'd be great. You guys could commute to work together. Imagine that.
Yeah, that would be very eco-friendly. That would make sense.
Do you have any funny stories from set?
Probably, but I can't remember. I'm so sorry. Most actors are overflowing with anecdotes, and you just happen to have come to the one who can't remember any of them. They come to me Like it will come to me sort of tomorrow when I'm in the bath, and I'll be like, oh, I should have told that story. That was hilarious.
I watched Babysitting.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Wow.
I really enjoyed it. I loved Winston. I loved Romola in it. I loved the ending.
Yeah. It was yeah, it was an interesting, it was sort of the script was not my idea. It was sort of the only thing I've ever directed, not that I've directed a huge amount, but it was the only thing I've ever directed which was sort of someone else's story. I think I'm perhaps more cut out to be an actor and a writer than a director. I'm not sure I would necessarily direct other people's work. I think I realized that you have to have a real connection with everything within the story if you're going to, or if I'm going to direct it well.
Do you and Romola work well together? You've directed her several times, and you've even directed our Stephen Cree.
Ah, Stephen Cree. Now, have you watched Having You?
I haven't seen that because I looked for it, but it's like in
one
other
of
countries or something.
Greatest screen performances is in that film. I truly believe that, and I think he would possibly admit it, although he would do it begrudgingly. He's brilliant.
Stephen's performance as, let me remember, Eric.
I can't even remember, so don't worry.
Yeah.
He was someone in a film that I wrote and directed whose character, I can't remember a single character's name from that film, to be honest, but Stephen is brilliant in that film. As for your first question, yeah, I've directed her twice. I mean, it's helpful that obviously she's fantastic, so that makes life easier. You know, obviously it's different working with your spouse. It brings a different energy into things, and you know, that can be difficult at times. But no, it's all been good so far. We didn't have kids at that point, and now that we obviously have kids, it makes it harder because one of you ideally would be around home to sort of to be there for the family if the other is working hard. So it may be that won't happen again, but who knows? Who knows? You never know.
Well, and if you guys are Hal and Minnie, then
yeah, exactly. Let's not write that off yet.
Speaking of Outlander connections, you know, there's this thing I've noticed doing this blog that there's a Doctor Who kind of link. There's a Doctors. There's a EastEnders. Did you come across any other, you know, John Bell and Emma Campbell-Jones, and then Matt Smith, obviously you've worked with him in Doctor Who, and then Sam was in Doctors as Emma, and Campbell-Jones was also in EastEnders, was Annette Badland. Did you work with any of those guys in those?
No, not really. I mean, you know, a lot of actors have done Doctors. That's a sort of good sort of learning ground for actors, and usually you sort of do your one guest episode. And again, my part in EastEnders was very, very small. That was perhaps my one non-posh role, actually. Was my sort of slightly aggressive Cockney man on a stag do in EastEnders.
Is this the one where you say, "Where are the strippers"?
Yes, something like that. Gosh, how do you know that? That's terrifying that you know that. Yeah, that was like my one sort of like non-posh performance, which didn't live that long in the memory, or sort of open the door for many other things of that ilk.
That's surprising.
I live in hope. I'm very up for doing more Cockney aggressive people looking for strippers.
And you did something with John Goodman too.
Yeah, that was Dancing on the Edge, which was brilliant. That was Stephen Polyakov TV series, which was quite starry. Yeah, it was John Goodman and Chiwetel Ejiofor, Matthew Good, and Jenna Coleman, who is now obviously Victoria, amongst other things. She was in my sort of group within that sort of show. I think we were both in sort of 3 or 4 episodes, and some would say that her career has gone on to bigger things than mine, but you know, they would be right. So
I think that you are the common link, though. I think you're the, you know, these people who come in contact with you, their careers sail, so it's only a matter of time, right?
Yeah, work with Sam and big things will happen to you, if not him. But yeah, maybe.
Did you sing and dance in that? Can you sing and dance too?
Only in the shower, really. Not very well. I would like to. Maybe. I've done a couple of sort of singing moments on stage, which were terrifying.
Well, you could do the theme song from Peppa Pig if you wanted to.
Where does that come from? That feels like, you know, that I watch a lot of Peppa. So I've been lucky, as you said, to work with some fantastic actors and some quite famous people, such as John Goodman. The most starstruck that I've ever been was when I walked into a read room and I met the actor who plays Daddy Pig. Couldn't speak to him. I was so beside myself with admiration for his work. At the time, I was possibly watching 4 to 5 hours of Peppa Pig a week. I think I totally sort of, you know, lost words. He was this lovely man called Richard Ridings, and he sort of came over to me, and he sounds just like Daddy Pig. He came over and said, "Oh, hello, Sam. Very nice to meet you." And I was like, I mean, I've watched them all. And I love them. My son is just beginning to sort of get into them a little bit, which is great. So I can do it all over again. Watching kids' TV can be quite trying at times, but yeah, Peppa is right up there. It makes me laugh, and it makes them laugh. So, what
can we look forward to seeing, hearing, watching from you next? What are you working on that you can talk about?
Well, let me think. So I'm in something that I think has just come out across the pond, which is McMafia. I think that's sort of been showing at the moment on AMC. So that's on at the moment. I'm in the first 2 episodes of that, and I really enjoyed that show. And then there's a film as well I did called The Mercy, starring Colin Firth and Rachel Weisz, that is it's just sort of come out in England. I assume it's come out in the US as well. In terms of stuff that I'm working on, I just did a little thing and a new show for Amazon called Carnival Row, which I think will be very exciting. It's an Amazon show. And the mustache, just gonna give a little stroke, is for something that I'm about to start, which I'm really excited by. I think the scripts are amazing, which is a show called Jerusalem, which is a 1940s spy thriller that I'm going to be working on for the next few months.
Thank you so much for talking to me and squeezing me into your between Peppa Pig and diaper changes. And
my pleasure.